What's up, everyone? Welcome to the channel. Today I'm going to be going over the mouse and keyboard specific long-range meta for Season 2.5, Season 2 Reloaded for Warzone. We're going to be using the True TTK Simulation summed up averages for everything you guys have put into that. That gives me the accuracy percentage of the average TGD user, essentially, for mouse and key specifically. Yesterday I did the controller video, so if you're interested in the controller meta, go check that out. I'll put a link to that in the video description so you can get to it easily. But let's start going through this. So in this table, I have the gun in the first column, the weighted TTK that the True TTK simulation tool spits out with a given accuracy, and then the accuracy average for all the users that tested this gun. The SOA Subverter is brand new, so since my video yesterday, 23 mouse and keyboard players have put in their accuracy, and obviously 23 data points is not very many, so it's not really a very good average for the community yet. It gets more and more accurate the more people use this, so anything under I don't know, probably like 200 data points is when I would start to say that it's less trustworthy, and obviously the fewer you get, the more and more untrustworthy the results get. So even these top three are all under 200, so take everything with a grain of salt here. Anything over 200 I think is going to be pretty consistently accurate, but yeah, I have way more data points for controller because there's so many more controller players, so that's why the mouse and keyboard video is not going to be quite as accurate, but still it has some really good information in here. And then this last column is the difference from controller, so we can kind of get an idea of how these weapons are different in terms of the average user's accuracy when someone's on mouse and key versus controller, because obviously they are completely different style of inputs. So certain recoil patterns are going to work better for mouse and key, and certain recoil patterns are going to work better for controller. So going through this, right off the bat, SOA Subverter, exactly like I would have expected, it's 15% more accurate than it is on controller. So I have 190 trials on controller after my video yesterday, only 23 like I said, so it's not super accurate. I'm not trying to say this is like perfect or anything, but it's what I would have expected, where the recoil pattern, the shape that it is, where it curves and then does a sharp change in direction, that's something that mouse and key can deal with a lot easier than controller, so I'm not surprised that it is more accurate here. This one really did surprise me, so again, it's only 104 data points, but that's a pretty good number. Anyway, it's the BP50. The BP50 came out 60% accurate. It is actually the most accurate mouse and key gun that there is, even over like the MCW. The MCW is all the way down here at 56%, ISO Hemlock 59%. The BP50 with 104 trials is the most accurate mouse and keyboard weapon across the board. And I think if we go look at the recoil chart, it's going to kind of make sense why that's the case. Alright, so I've got the BP50. We'll turn the MCW on here in a second, but the BP50's recoil was very unique compared to pretty much any other weapon that I've tested in Modern Warfare 3. It is just basically a perfectly straight line up and to the right, just slightly to the right. It's almost just straight up. And on top of that, it doesn't have very much of that horizontal bounce where it's like there's like randomness as it goes up. It doesn't have very much of that by default compared to most of the other weapons. So that makes it just super, super consistent and repeatable. And you can see it has a really high recoil rate, 228 versus the MCW's 149. But that doesn't matter as much on mouse and key. Mouse and key is better at controlling high amounts of recoil, I would say. So that's kind of why I think this comes out the way it does. Super, super accurate, just because it's really consistent. It's super easy to learn how to use the BP50 because the entire recoil pattern is exactly the same, and there's none of that randomness horizontal bounce compared to a lot of the other weapons. So if I turn this off and turn the MCW on, you can see that the MCW is similar. It's straight up, which is one of the reasons why it has really good accuracy as well, but it's much thicker. So I have 10 recoil plots stacked on top of each other here, and you can see that compared to the BP50, it's much a wider spread than the BP50. So that's what I'm talking about, where that horizontal deviation that you can't predict, where it's just bouncing as it goes up that predefined line, that is impossible to predict and impossible to correct for, and the BP50 just doesn't have very much of that. All right, back over to the list, the TAQ Evolvere. So I put a little note here. So this includes data from before the recoil got nerfed, and it only has 79 data points, so not super accurate again. But I can tell you I used the TAQ Evolvere the other night, and I played on mouse and key, and it felt super accurate still. So even after the recoil has been nerfed, it's still super, super accurate and a very good choice. Bruen Mark 9 is in 4th at 1359 weighted TTK. You can see it's much less accurate. It's only 48.6% accurate, which is why I think people don't like it, because it feels bad just because they're not hitting shots. And I would say that accuracy is important beyond just this weighted TTK, because when you're hitting your shots, you're flinching the enemy and making them miss shots. So it's kind of, accuracy's pretty important on top of just how it affects the TTK. So I would say that, even though this is in 4th, maybe compared to some other weapons, because the accuracy is so bad, it might not actually be in 4th. But it's just such a good contender at all ranges that it comes out pretty nicely in the numbers. And we have the Pulamyot. Pulamyot always just sits there. It's just been really good since the game came out, pretty much. And this is most likely always with the conversion kit. SVA 545, very accurate, 53.6% across the board, and very similar to controller, only 2.2% different than controller. Holger 26 is much better on, or a little bit better on mouse and key than it was on controller, 3.7% more accurate. 1443 weighted TTK, so it's pretty good. It's not super great, but pretty good. SDB 556 is next up at 1450, 50% accurate, so not terrible, but not great. So one that really surprised me, this Holger 556 was down here at 47.9% accuracy on mouse and key, which is 3.5% worse than it was on controller. So again, I'm assuming that this is because we only have 66 data points for mouse and key, so it's probably just an inaccurate result, because the Holger's super similar to the MTZ 556. It's just maybe a little less curvy, so it doesn't make sense that it would be that much worse comparatively. And you can see that it seems like the MTZ 556 also was only 1.5% better than controller on mouse and key. So that's one of the lower ones. In general, mouse and key is a little bit more accurate at longer ranges, but this is barely any better than controller, and then this one is much worse than controller. And they both have the same recoil pattern where they kind of just do a little S-curve. And I'm wondering if that just means that that is a recoil pattern that aim assist and controller combined just really like compared to mouse and key, which would make sense to me because it's kind of hard to learn how to do that shape with a mouse. But it's just interesting, just something I wanted to note. And then the ones that tend to be really like straight recoil patterns, like the BP50, tend to be much better on mouse and key, or ones that have sharp changes like the SOA Subverter are also much better on mouse and key. I'm going to go into the actual scores for mouse and key here in a second, but I just want to say that the absolute best way to actually know what you should be using is to do the True TTK simulation test yourself, where you go into the firing range, you shoot the last dummy 5 or more times, at least 10 is the best. Come in here, put your percentages in, the accuracies that you get from the firing range, they show up in the top left of the screen, and then just press simulate, and you will get really, really accurate results for you specifically, and which guns you're the most accurate with, and how those accuracies kind of correlate with the weapon builds that you're using and the weapons that you're using with their damage ranges and damage values and things. So I think that by far the best way for you to find the meta for what you should be using is to use the True TTK simulation yourself, rather than just using the average that I'm showing in this video. The average is better than what most people have, which is nothing as far as data is concerned. But still, by far the best is just to use this tool yourself. In my controller video yesterday, I covered how to use this tool, and then also there's a video down at the bottom of the page that explains how to use it properly. So if you guys want to use this, it takes a premium subscription to TGD, which is $5 a month, but that is the best way to directly support me anyway, and all the work that I do for the website, for my YouTube channel, anything. It's just the best way to support in general. $5 a month, you get access to every feature on TGD, the True TTK simulation, best stat tool, STK calculator, metagen, all the recoil stuff. So you get everything with that. Doesn't matter what tier you get. We have the other tiers just as options for people who want them. But yeah, best way to do it, True TTK simulation for sure. All right, so let's go through these scores. So for the big map, we have the scores over on the left, and then small map over on the right. So I still think Bruen is absolutely 10 out of 10 for big map. I think the BP50 is much better for mouse and key than it was on controller for big map. It's just so accurate that I think it's going to be a good option for mouse and key players as well. SOA Subverter, I ranked a little bit higher for mouse and key as well, just because you're better at controlling recoil on mouse and key, specifically the type of recoil that the SOA has. So I think that it is a little bit better than I ranked it on controller. Pulamyot and SVA 545, both at 9.5. So the SVA 545, when you put it on burst mode, has no recoil. So it's literally probably the most accurate weapon on this list by far, if it was the actual burst version, not the full auto version. So it's a great weapon. It doesn't hit very hard, which is why I didn't give it like a 10 out of 10 for the big map, but it is very accurate, and it's one of the best for sure. Holger 26, 9.25, still pretty good. It's one of the less accurate ones, but it's just good everywhere compared to a lot of the other weapons, so that's why it's still pretty good. TAQ Evolvere just has a huge damage drop off at like 35-40 meters. That makes it really bad for super long range engagements, which is why I only have a 9 out of 10 for the big map. Now for small map, it's going to be a little bit better, but that's just because it's got good TTK up close and bad at longer ranges. Holger 556 was terrible on mouse and key for some reason. I don't know why, so that's why it's all the way down here at 9. If you're looking for a low recoil option, I would definitely recommend the SVA 545 over the Holger 556. Ram 7 is just not super accurate on mouse and key or controller for that matter, and it doesn't have good TTK at super long ranges, so that's why it's not great here for the big map. Over on the small map scores, we have the BP50 at 10 out of 10 again, just because it's so accurate. It has good mobility. It's going to be so much faster than a lot of these other options, ADS speed, movement speed, things like that. It's just going to be a much quicker weapon than a lot of these other options. The SOA Subverter, also 10 out of 10. That's the new battle rifle. It's just got really fast time to kill, much faster than the BP50 at every range. It's just harder to hit your shots with it. Bruen Mark 9 got a bunch of movement speed buffs in this recent patch, like significant movement speed buffs and ADS speed buffs, so it's going to be much better on small map, and it has really good time to kill, so I think it is a pretty viable option on the smaller maps. Ram 7 is just consistently good on small maps because it has such a good time to kill up close compared to a lot of the other options. SVA 545 is just a low recoil option that I would recommend here again. MTZ 556 and Holger 556 are both okay, but they just don't perform as well on mouse and key as they did on controller for some reason. So I would lean more towards the SVA 545. And you can just, like I said, swap it to burst mode and it will, it's going to be super accurate at longer ranges. TAQ Evolvere is a heavy LMG, so even though, like I was saying during the big map scores, it has really good TTK up close, really bad TTK at long ranges, which kind of matches up with a good weapon for small map. It's very like the Ram 7 in that way, but it's just such a heavy, slow LMG that kind of negates that a little bit for the small map. So that's why it still comes out 9 out of 10. I think it's still very good, but it's just not going to be, like the meta or anything. All right, let's do some builds here. So for the Bruen, I think it's a pretty simple build. It's just going to be Spirit Fire Suppressor, the XRK Horizon V2 barrel, and then for the magazine, we're going to use the 60 round mag. You can see it has crazy movement speed, ADS time, everything benefits. It's just huge benefits there for the 60 round mag. And then the last attachment is just going to be the standard Bruen heavy support grip. This is that angled underbarrel that really helps with horizontal recoil. It hurts your vertical a little bit, but it's easy to manage that on mouse and key, and this build just works out the best of any that I've found. For optic, I would probably use the jack glassless, so I think I've added that now to TGD. So yeah, jack glassless optic hurts your ADS time a tiny percent, it's like 2% or something, but the visual recoil reduction is totally worth it. So that's what I would recommend for the Bruen. I think it's a very good weapon for both the big map and the small map at this point. On to the SOA Subverter. This is going to be a weapon that kills super fast. It's going to be hard to use, and you're going to have to learn how to use it correctly, learn to hit your shots with that weird recoil pattern. But if you do, it's going to be pretty much the best choice by far. So we're going to use the TYLR8. This is going to be basically the exact same build as the controller version of the gun. So TYLR8 is minus 7% vertical and gun kick, and then 27% horizontal. So huge horizontal help there. This has weird recoil, so that helps a lot. We're going to use the Dozer long barrel. We're going to use the same Bruen heavy support grip that we always use. This is going to be a little bit extra vertical recoil, but it's going to help with that horizontal a lot, and it has that visual recoil reduction that we like with firing aim stability. Magazine, 50 round drum, and then the jack glassless optic. So the jack glassless, like I said, for the Bruen has really nice visual recoil reduction, so we pretty much want to use that on anything that has a lot of shake, and the SOA Subverter definitely has a lot of shake. So again, this gun is hard to use, but I think it is one of those weapons that if you master it, it's going to just absolutely fry people. All right, next up we have the BP50 here. Pretty simple build again. I'm going to give you two actually. So VT7 Spirit Fire Suppressor just helps with recoil, bullet velocity, damage range, and keeps you off the minimap. Barrel, we're going to use the Lower 9 heavy barrel. Somehow this barrel doesn't even hurt your ADS time, even though giving you 15% range, 18% bullet velocity, 8% recoil, 5% gun kick. It's crazy. Really good attachment there. And then we're actually going to use the Forbearer heavy stock. So this is 11% gun kick, 16% recoil for a little penalty to your ADS time. magazine, 45 round mag. Instead of this stock, you could use Kimura Ren underbarrel. So that's what I did in my mouse or my controller video, is I had the Kimura Ren underbarrel. That does help your firing aim stability, which is super important. Hurts your horizontal recoil a little bit, which makes it a little more bouncy, but the firing aim stability kind of counters that. So that's also a really good build. But this is what I'm going to say for mouse and key here, and then we're going to use the Jack Glassless again. I just think this is the best optic right now. So really, really solid build here. So I'll take this into the firing range and show you guys. It's very, very easy to control. This is with the Spirit Fire suppressor. It's got a little bit of a bounce, but you can see that like I have 61% accurate there. And I don't play this game very much anymore, to be honest, and can just easily control this. 63.64%. I was wondering why this gun got a nerf in the most recent patch. They nerfed the first damage range a bunch, and I was wondering why that was, because nobody was really using it. And then I went and I looked at these accuracy percentages on both controller and mouse and key, and I was like, oh, okay, that makes sense. It's performing way better than people thought it was. It's just a very, very easy to use gun, especially for mouse and key. So that's the one build. Really, really like this build with that 4-bearer heavy stock. But if you want this to be an absolute beam, I would put on the Socken Tread 40. So obviously you're no longer suppressed. But replacing that suppressor with the Socken just makes this thing ridiculously accurate. I mean, it just does not move. So if you're someone who doesn't like controlling recoil very much, or you just want to be able to like hit people off head glitches, I would say this is the build to use for sure. Just swap that suppressor over to the Socken Tread 40. Alright guys, that's it for the video. Hope you enjoyed it. Hope you learned something. I think that these accuracy percentages are really cool. I think it is absolutely the best way to find your meta specifically. If you use this tool yourself, just take your weapons into the firing range, shoot that last target dummy 10 times, get your accuracy percentage, plug it into the True TTK simulation with the exact build that you used, simulate it, and boom, you know instantly what your weighted TTK is, and you can slide the weighted TTK around to put whatever you think is actually where your engagements happen. Doesn't have to be at 35 meters with a 20 meter standard deviation like I used in this video. You can put it at 27 meters with a 15 meter standard deviation if that's what you think small maps should use. And same for big map. You can change it up and use it and specifically tune it for how you play, what weapons you like, and things like that. So I think that is just the most powerful tool on TGD, like even more than MetaGen, because MetaGen is still just kind of, it's a giant algorithm that looks for the best weapons, but it's hard to know exactly how you would want to weight things for how you like to play. But TTK simulation actually uses an accuracy that you did in the firing range to show you the TTK numbers. And obviously TTK is not the only thing that's important. So when you're looking at that, you need to kind of, take the average between what MetaGen says is meta and what the True TTK simulation tool says is meta for you, and figure out, LMGs are really heavy, so maybe you were trying to build weapons for small map and an LMG came out with the fastest weighted TTK in True TTK simulation. Well, you need to realize that just because it has the best TTK doesn't mean it's going to be for sure the best weapon. So that's kind of how I would use that. Highly recommend actually going in and trying this out for yourself. But again, that's it for the video. Hope you guys enjoyed it, and I'll see you in the next one.